Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Bosch Legacy Season 1, Episode 4. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, let's start off with Chandler. I guess this episode kind of gave me the answer of, I guess the Jeffrey situation is done. I didn't expect, there's always a possibility it might circle back around, but it does seem like that is resolved, so I guess we're just going to see Chandler take on other cases, but maybe everything's going to kind of culminate in some storylines being longer than others. Maybe every couple episodes she gets a new case or something while she's working on the whole Carl Rogers situation, but essentially she gets a new case where a guy, Russell, was in prison. He was locked up for like 2 weeks because because an AI system, facial recognition, ended up mistaking him for the criminal they were looking for because of a store getting robbed. So first and foremost, that was an interesting development because the cop who was in charge of the detective didn't do his job right, which is like, yeah, relying on facial recognition, that seems fine, but I feel like why didn't you use the rest? I feel like someone should have called you out for the fact that you didn't do your due diligence. Like, I feel like stuff had to be written in your notes about, like, all right, the suspect literally Russell said, like, yo, I have an alibi that apparently the detective never ran. I'm like, I feel like there's checks and balances to, like, follow up on that. Like, no, I guess no one was like, hey, open and shut. That's all there was to it, which is kind of sad. And Russell's life kind of suffered because of it. It's like, he's like, you could literally Google me, and the first thing that comes up is about this. Because while he was locked up, his job was given to someone else, and he hasn't had a steady job since. Because, not easy with that on your record. So, and Chandler ends up saying, like, hey, like, well, first and foremost, I think it's interesting that Martin gave her this particular case because it's one of those cases like, oh, you could set, like, this could be one of those cases that, like, it's, like, attached to your name, like, yo, you set the groundwork, you set the precedence for, like, some type of case like this because it could go beyond just because the facial recognition stuff is such a new technology that it's faulty. She even brings up when she's talking to the detective saying, like, you do know that it has, like, a higher chance of mistaking minorities out of anyone else, more so than it would Caucasians. So, and it's proven so because it's like, right, did you ever, like, is this the mugshot you use to compare the suspect from the robbery to Russell? And it's like, yes. If you had, and she's like, if you had done your due diligence, you would have noticed that the suspect has tattoos and Russell doesn't. That's some basic, it's like, yo, that's not even touching on his alibi. She didn't even have to go harder to paint. That was like surface level basic stuff of him not doing his job. Now, he isn't supposed to be representative of all cops or anything like that, but it's like, that's still jacked up. It's like, you did nothing. You were like, facial recognition said, like, it's well reset, like, it's a new technology that is being used around the country. Fine and dandy to rely on machinery and AIs and stuff like that, but your job still involves you doing some legwork because it is a new technology. It's still not foolproof because even she was like, oh, like, do you think that it was exact or something like that? He's like, no, but it was. Even he admitted that it wasn't going to be like 100% right, that it's sometimes right, and that's when she got into the whole thing of, yeah, right, it mistakes minorities all the time at a much higher rate than it does Caucasians. So it's like, dude, that's embarrassing that it's just like, you didn't even notice that your suspect, Russell, has no tattoos. The guy who robbed the place has tattoos. That's like such an easy detail to catch, and it's like, he didn't do his due diligence, so. I also thought it was kind of an interesting thing, too, that Chandler was able to get the store owner to open up a little bit. I'd actually looked her up, that actress, I was like, because she seemed a little familiar, and one of the things I know her from, I think she played, I'm blanking now, but Jamie Chung's character's mom in, I believe that was her mom, right? In Lovecraft Country, because she was in Lovecraft Country. I was like, oh, hey, that's cool. Chandler was able to connect with her because it's like, right, I know what it's like to have, be a victim of gun violence. I was shot twice, so being able to connect with her like that, I think kind of disarmed her a little bit more and probably made her a little bit more willing to help. So, but at the end, to not raise too many alarms, they are to put this all behind them. They are willing to settle for 1.2 million, which obviously for Russell, it's like, oh my God, that's a lot of money. That's enough money to help make things right, tide him over, probably like, you know, put his family in a better position and stuff like that. But as I was referencing earlier, for Chandler, it's like, right, this is an opportunity. You could get an even bigger paycheck, and we could set the precedence of like kind of screwing them over, because like, right, you taking this at a much, like taking this to a higher level in the courts and stuff like that could be revolutionary, because once again, it would set precedents and stuff like that. So it's like, obviously she has her own motives for doing it, but there is still the silver lining of the greater good it would do. But Russell decided not to go down that route. He decided to take the 1.2 million because it's now. The amount of, he would definitely get a bigger check, but it would also involve more court, because for her, Chandler decided to go down this route because she's like, if we go to court, we could easily win because we got a great case. But he didn't want to wait because it would have been a year's time. It's like, this is 1.2 mil sitting in front of you. It's like, and someone who's been out of a job, because she's offering like, right, we'll help you find a job and stuff like that. But he's like, right, even if he's probably thinking to himself, with my situation, because this doesn't, even with this, like the longer we're in the court and stuff like that, it doesn't officially clear my name. I don't even know if this necessarily, like even getting the, like this, civil situation, I don't even know if that technically will count as clearing his name. His name is still kind of run through the mud. So I don't think even that cleared his name, but maybe it did. I don't know. But I'm sure like his name would still be in the muck, in the mud, if they had continued it for like a year at most. So I get the whole, like, right, me and my family need this now. This can at least tide me over and help, even if I, you know, bounce from job to job, you know, because that was also probably why he didn't take Chandler's offer, because it's right, even if you help me get a job, there's no guarantee it's going to be anything steady with my circumstances. So, but, so Chandler was disappointed by whether or not we'll continue this. Like, you know, the Jeffrey thing was at least, 2 episodes, yeah, because nothing in episode 3 touched on it. So it was like about 2 episodes. This is 1 episode, so we'll see whether or not anything continues from this or any other cases that she gets going forward. But other than that, this episode, let's jump to the Maddie situation. Obviously, she's still thinking about Prita to the point she's asking Vasquez, like, hey, let's just stop by her place, just do a check on her. It's like, that's not our job. You need to focus on doing your job. Sex crimes has got this. That's their job. We're not social workers. But I get it. And I think this episode also, the opening where Maddie's like going for a run, resonates. Why? Because I think it's not a 1-for-1, but I think it's Maddie's coming from the perspective of, I was almost a victim. Like, I was literally almost like someone put out a hit on me last season. So being caught in a crossfires like that, you know, I think that's what really resonated with her when it came to Prita. Like, I think she knows what it's like to be a victim of a situation. And once again, it's not a 1-to-1. It's very different circumstances, but they've both been in very dangerous things. And I think maybe that's why Maddie, like, connects with her even more. And so she wants to check on her, but can't. Because Vasquez tells her to. Once again, Maddie's not going to listen. I thought was really interesting because she was hanging out with the other Boots, and they're telling their respective stories of kind of like, as Harry kind of puts it, their war stories. And one of the detectives, one of the rookies, Boots, ends up talking about a guy who killed himself. She was like, yeah, he was like, went down 70 miles per hour, was like a pancake. And then she kind of said something, I guess, was very morbid, and everyone else was kind of like, one of the guys, you see him go, kind of nervously laughing, and Maddie kind of laughs along too. I'm like, that's kind of, I think it's probably one of those things where it's like, well, you're a doctor or a mortician, like when you're just surrounded by that so much, you just kind of have to joke about it. I feel like it's kind of messed up because that's a very, like, I don't know, it feels a little jaded considering, like, this is your first outing because you're all Boots. It's not like you're veteran cops. It's like, no, you're Boots. So I think it's just the camaraderie of it all. Maddie's just kind of like, sure, I'll laugh. It's like, but that's kind of an effed up thing to laugh about. It's like, it was more so she was joking, like, oh, like, wouldn't it be better if you had OD'd somewhere else? Because, like, I feel bad for the poor bastard that has to scrape you off. I'm like, that's very inconsiderate to say, but it's like, right, you're at the bar, you're shit talking. Like I said, it didn't seem like a genuine laugh from everyone. It just felt like an uncomfortable laugh. But obviously, when it gets to Maddie's situation, they already know what her circumstances are. They're like, oh yeah, you're investigating like that rape situation, you know, and it's like, yeah, Maddie, like, they're like, oh, so how's your victim? And she's like, as far as I know, she's okay, and she just had to get out of there because it's just like, I think it once again kind of resurfaced some stuff that she's going with that she hasn't really fully dealt with, and I think that's why she feels probably even more indebted to see Preeta okay. It's just like, right, you see someone who's been a victim of something like that, because she's never seen that firsthand like that, and I think once again you mix in her own personal experiences of, you know, someone trying to kill her last season, in a final season of Bosch. So I think all of that culminates in these very complex feelings. What I also thought was kind of interesting about that too is that Maddie ended up calling Harry, and she doesn't want to let him know what's up, even to the point like he's like, hey, do you want to talk or whatever, you can like come over or something. And she's literally, it seems like, if I'm not mistaken, she's outside of his office, or at least like pretty close nearby. She can look, and she's tempted to go in, but she's like, nah, I'm good. But I'm like, she's like, yeah, I'm Uber, I'm fine, I'm not driving. But she didn't tell him like she was so close. She wanted his advice about it, but I think Maddie feels the need of like, she wants to kind of shoulder a lot on her own, kind of like Harry does. She wants to shoulder a lot of that on her own, and she wants to feel like, it's like, right, if I want to grow, I can't constantly go to my dad for help, even though he's the best person to kind of workshop a lot of that, because it's like, if she had talked to her dad about, he probably could have like helped her figure out like what she should do under these circumstances, because probably talking it out with him. But it's like, yeah, because talking to her partner, you know, Vasquez isn't really going to lead anywhere, because Vasquez keeps shutting it down. So feeling the way she feels about it, plus it's like I said, you culminate that with everything with Preeta, and, you know, her own, you know, potentially still dealing, much like Chandler, still dealing with the trauma of, well, Chandler, once again, was almost killed and was in a coma. Maddie, at least, never went through the same situation Chandler did, like almost dying, but still the trauma of knowing like someone tried to kill you and almost being a victim of something like that. Like, she probably doesn't want to stress her dad out, because it's like, right, I don't want you to worry about me. She probably is bottling a lot of it up, and it's like, right, I need to be stronger, I need to get my shit together, like trying to be strong and not wanting to rely on her dad, even though it's like, right, he has the years of experience and stuff like that to kind of potentially help you. But I think she feels like the only way I'm ever going to grow is if I try to handle this on my own, which obviously you can admire that that need to feel like, hey, I want to try and handle this on my own, find my own solutions, which I think is important. But it's also like, right, you got to know when to lean on people and when not to, you know, which, I mean, that's a complicated thing sometimes, when it's just like, sometimes you got to figure stuff out on your own. And sometimes it's like, right, you're just so proud that you want to handle things on your own and won't really turn to people when you need it. So we'll see how that plays out. But I thought that was kind of an interesting element to it. So, but other than that, we also have Harry's side of things, where he actually got to meet with Olivia. I was completely wrong. Well, certain elements I was right about. It does seem like there is a mother and a child involved with it. It's not Olivia. Olivia is his adopted sister. So they were both adopted by their parents. So their adopted parents met Viviana, but obviously they hint to the fact is that Dominik didn't know too much about his circumstances, because Olivia's hearing it for the first time that Viviana ended up killing herself. She's like, oh, I'm glad. She's like, oh my God, that's so horrible. I'm so glad that her brother died not knowing it. But obviously, it's she misses her brother every day, to the point she's like, puts a message up there. Like, I thought was kind of like a yearly thing, but I guess like he was just scrolling past. To be fair, in retrospect, we were only like seeing some of the ones he's also he was scrolling. So it's like she's been leaving messages like every day. She misses him every day. Especially because she talks about the fact is he died because his chopper was shot down 2 weeks before he was supposed to come home, and for her, it's like that's the most tragic thing ever. But Harry's going through her stuff, and he ultimately ends up finding a camera roll that he ends up getting developed, and there's a woman and a child. But the photos were taken the same time he was supposed to be in Nam, so he ends up kind of theorizing that maybe he came home during that time and then went back to Vietnam. We did find out, like, right, at one point during a picture, he has a shirt with a guy named Lewis on it, and his sister was like, oh, like, one of his buddies' name was Lewis, couldn't get past the swimming test, so he put on his shirt and pretended to be him and took it for him. I'm like, okay, so are we setting the groundwork for the fact is that he's actually still alive, and he faked it? Like, the person who died wasn't Dominik, it was actually maybe Lewis, and maybe, like, he had, like, Dominik's, like, credentials or whatever, like maybe his dog tag or something on to make it seem like it was him, but maybe the real Dominik has been in hiding the entire time because he could get in trouble for because he didn't get drafted. His sister said that he got enlisted because he, as a medic, because he always wanted to be a doctor, had big plans. So part of me is now wondering, is that what the twist is going to be? Because we see that he has a wife, a significant other and a child based on those photos. So once again, there's potentially a grandchild in this picture. Maybe that's what that's in. Maybe that's what that's signifying. Maybe it's not. But part of me wonders, could it be that, once again, Lewis is the one that died in Vietnam and Nick came back and is under Lewis's identity? Because what if we end up tracking down Lewis and it's like, yeah, they switch places? And so I think that'd be interesting if that's the lane they'd ultimately decide to go down. Because it would turn out, I think it'd be sad, but because for one, it'd be beautiful because, like, hey, Vance would get to know, like, hey, my son's actually alive. I get to actually know him. Two, it'd be sad, though, because I don't know if there's a statute of limitations on him, because the doctor dude that, I'm blanking on his name now, that Harry's tight with from the original series and everything, he said, like, right, if he tried to sneak back into the country around that time, he would have, like, faced, like, charges, like a court-martial type of thing. So I'm wondering, is there a statute of limitations on that? Like, if he abandoned his duty, faked being dead, like, I'm sure, like, there'd be repercussions for that. So him going public, being found out to still be alive, especially with this whole Vance thing, that would, like, anyone that wanted to make sure he didn't acquire any of this, like, legacy that is Vance's, could do that to kind of discredit him, and that could be a whole thing, if that's the direction they're going down. But the fact is they introduced that Lewis element makes me feel like it's got to be a setup to be like, no, Nick is actually still alive. He's been alive the entire time. So we'll have to wait and see on that front to see what kind of goes down there. But Olivia did get visited by some people, and obviously they went into this knowing their stuff. They're like, Olivia, right? You're done. We're here about. It's like, oh, I don't know who you're looking for. It's like, oh, we're looking for Dominik. I don't know who that is. Don't play coy. We know that's your brother. So they came in armed. They knew what's what. So they're questioning her. She's like, yeah, they said they were from the VA, wanted to give me some benefits of his. But Harry's like, why would they come 40 years later? Why now? Timing's too interesting. They come immediately after I leave your place? Yeah, there's something suspicious. So Harry's like, don't worry about it. But they come back around, call me again. So Harry ends up talking to Mo about it. Mo's like, right. Because Harry's like, I changed vehicles and everything. What's up with that? He's like, when's the last time you looked up? And it's like, a drone? It's like, yeah. So for now, they're going to continue like business as usual, like nothing's wrong. Like they don't know, like they're being followed. He doesn't fully know that he's being followed, that he hasn't figured out there's a drone situation. So there's that. But he also gets visited by Sloane, which was interesting. Sloane's like, okay, I'm here on Mr. Vance's orders. It's like, so tell me what your investigation gave you. The moment he's pressing like that, I was like, you bastard. So you probably are working with the new CEO guy. I guess because he's going to get some slice of that. I don't remember if it was this episode or whether it was last episode. Once again, it's blurring again. I want to say it was this episode that Ida was helping Vance sign something where it's like, right, the St. Helens will get like money in perpetuity, like not just like a one lump sum of like, because it's going to be like 20,000. He's like, is that really all we can do? So he wants to kind of get money sent to it in perpetuity. And he's like, oh, Ida, what would I do without you? And she's like, what would I do without you? So I'm willing to give Ida some slack, but I'm still like, I don't know. Because like I said from the beginning, I didn't trust Sloane and Ida, but I was backing up a little bit. I'm still on the fence about Ida, but I'm like, no, Sloane sold him out. The fact is he's there in person asking for information, even though Vance was like, do not report to anyone but me. And so even Bosch is like, yo, I will talk to you, Sloane, when I talk to Vance when he gets better. Tell him to call me, and then I can start talking to you through him. Talking to him through you, so. And he calls up him immediately like, hey, get back to me, which throughout the rest of the episode he never did, but Sloane is like, yeah, he's getting worse and worse. Like, so the fact is that he's been it's like, yo, you're definitely working with because I guess it's like, right, maybe he was promised something like, hey, you help out, like, you'll get a nice slice of this pie, it's, once again, there are billions at stake here. So, of course, like, so that's why I'm also, like, on the fence about Ida. I want to believe that Ida has Vince's best interest at heart. But once again, stuff in front of him, the fact is she could be like, oh, you need to sign this, and it could be complete and utter horse shit. Because also, she forges his signature, too, because, like, oh, his hand was shaking, and she signed it. So, she can sign a whole bunch of other stuff, too, for, being so close to him, make him think, like, oh, I'm on your side, when in actuality, I'm potentially robbing you blind. I'm 50-50 on Ida. I'm kind of like, no, I don't trust Sloane, so we'll see where things kind of go from there. But obviously, a big part of this, too, was continuing the investigation into Rogers as Bosch and Chandler served him with the papers, like the civil suit that's being held against him. He's getting sued. And now Alex and Lev saw that in the news. They were not happy. He's like, oh, cool. We heard you're being sued for millions. He's like, yeah. It's whatever. He's like, just give me time. It's basically like, it's as good as done. And Lev kind of made reference to like a Russian kind of saying, basically being like, it was basically the equivalency of almost like close but no cigar. Like, close enough isn't done. It isn't all the way. So it's like, just because you're close isn't the same as done. So just because you're close, you can become close to paying us off and stuff like that, isn't actually paying us off. So yeah, he's definitely nervous about it. So he needs to get that money, and he's going to try it. Once again, he had till like the end of the week. So Bosch needs to kind of listen in on what he says. He's got boots on the ground. He's like, yo, are you getting Jen or somebody on the ground? It's like, nope, it's your boys, Crates and Barrel. I'm like, yeah. So this does open up the window of like, right, we're probably going to get some appearances from some people from the original series, but it won't be in a continuous capacity like we did in the original series. Like, these are familiar faces we got to see like all the time, like Crates and Barrel. So there'll probably like be other characters, maybe like an Edgar or a Billets that might pop in from time to time, if they deem it so, like if that's what they end up doing. But it might be something of that nature, but we'll have to wait and see. But it was nice to see your boys again, retired, but still got their own connections. It's like, yeah, kind of them on the outside like Harry is, because they were able to get some DMV photos. Like, how'd you do that? It's like, yep, I think it was Crates that was like, oh, say no more. And Harry's like, I'm not trying to judge you for your methods. I'm like legitimately curious, because he's, he has to kind of find his way around getting stuff done as well. So, but they ended up overhearing the conversation, and it ended up even following some of the people that Carl Rogers was in a meeting with, because he was with his financial guy as well as some other people, and they're talking about a second tap or something. You're like, what's this all about? So turns out this is not necessarily about oil, but it's kind of about gas, because this is about some manufacturer or something. Some place where like tankers are going in. Once one goes out, another one goes in, and that seems like to be the only thing. So it turns out that they've been over the years or whatever, however long they've been doing this, they've been siphoning off gas, and now he wants a second tap. It's like, no, if you start doing this, the guy was telling Carl, like, they're going to definitely notice and we're going to get caught. It's like, well, because also it's like, we got to be careful too, because like, I guess like everything needs to be off, because if it's not, everything could like go blow sky high type of thing. Because I think, didn't Harry find like explosives on some of those pipes? So maybe the plan is to like siphon off some of the gas and then like cause an explosion to kind of cover the fact that they've been stealing gas. Like, maybe that's the plan. So Harry was able to sneak in, kind of get that info, and he passed it on to Chandler. But the episode ends with Harry getting caught. It's like, right, you're not a police officer, you're not there legally, and it's going to be considered trespassing, and it's also going to let Carl know that you're a little closer onto him. Granted, the civil suit and everything is one thing, but now it's like, oh, he knows you're neck deep in their business, so that's not going to, that's kind of gets rid of some of that element of surprise. Yes, you know what he's up to, but he can probably expedite things, especially because they were trying to make all this happen in the next 48 hours. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where this all goes. I'm assuming, and do correct me if I'm wrong, that, because I haven't read into it, but I'm assuming we're going to maybe get like one episode a week, maybe. I don't know. Because I was also thinking about this too, because I had talked about the whole conversation about stuff with Jeffrey being done, but I was like, right, that doctor being murdered, there might still be something to that, because it's like, right, that was never solved. So that's why I'm like, maybe some of that will circle back around and kind of connect in some way. Like I said, because with Chandler, that kind of leaves like this two plot threads, and I'm like, it's the Jeffrey situation is with Russell. Like, once again, it's probably like, right, getting Jeffrey cleared is probably that. Like, someone homicide has to really work that case, so that's on them. And this whole Russell thing has kind of been resolved. Maybe there are elements to it will continue going forward. Maybe that facial recognition stuff might be a future issue or something, but we'll have to wait and see. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.